Health officials in London, Ontario have found the source of a persistent outbreak of legionnaires disease. So far, the outbreak has killed 4 people and sent more than 90 others to hospital. The disease stems from a bacteria that can occur naturally in soil and water. Investigators found the bacteria at several water cooling towers and a Sofina food facility in the city. The CBC's Hilary Johnstone has more details. So what do we know, Hilary?
Well, we know that this Sofina Foods, which is a meat processing facility in the city's East End, has now been identified as the source. And officials in London, Ontario have been trying to figure this out for a very long time. This is now the second summer in a row that there has been an outbreak of legionnaires disease in that southwestern Ontario city. And so far, or up until this point, I should say, officials were not able to figure out where this was coming from. So here's a photograph of that facility. What we are being told is that the operators have been very cooperative with health officials, that they are now in the process of trying to make sure that all of this is brought under control and that the Legionella bacteria, which is what then goes on to cause Legionnaire's disease in some people, is cleaned up so that no one else gets sick. It was just a couple of weeks ago, so earlier this month at the start of August, that health officials declared that outbreak over, but then once they did that, other people started getting sick. And at this point, after 2 summers of this outbreak, 4 people have died and about 90 people have been hospitalized. And Legionella bacteria, it can cause Legionnaire's disease in some people, but not everyone. So you can be exposed to this bacteria, but then not get sick. Legionnaire's disease itself is essentially pneumonia. Sometimes Legionella bacteria can cause something that's not quite as serious, called Pontiac fever, and that will give you mild flu-like symptoms. But certainly with this outbreak, it was widespread and a lot of people became very, very ill. So I do want to show you here a board, sort of a map of London, Ontario. You see all that color, sort of that faded color in the middle? That shows you where all of these cases were. That larger circle, that shows a 6-kilometer radius. So all of these cases occurring in about a 6-kilometer radius. And that was where officials were then sort of able to narrow down where this might be coming from. What we are told by health officials is that that meat processing facility is sort of at the epicenter there of where all of those cases were. So yes, those cases occurring over a widespread area, but now that they have identified the source of all of this, it should be able to help them get this all under control. Because remember, at one point, health officials even found positive bacteria inside the cooling towers at Victoria Hospital, which is the region's largest medical facility. So this became very, very widespread. And we'll get into it a little bit more in a second here, Andrew, why you're seeing so much water, because that's an important part about how all this spreads as well. But first, let's listen to officials with the Middlesex-London Health Unit talking about how they thought they got this all under control, and then it popped back up again.
After we declared it over, however, we, over the last 2 weeks, have received additional cases, which indicated to us that the source had started transmitting again. We had hoped that the remediation efforts undertaken by operators earlier this year was sufficient to end the outbreak, but with several weeks in the heat, the bacteria likely regrew and started transmitting again.
And what we also heard there from health officials is that even though Sofina Foods had been doing work to try to make sure that they weren't the source of this outbreak, in some cases, there's actually a layer of bacteria that is so thick it has to be physically removed from the facility where it is. It cannot be brought under control just using chemicals, for example. So what we heard from the doctors, it's possible in this case that was what needed to happen and just hadn't been happening.
Okay, so this sounds kind of puzzling though for people who wouldn't have come directly in contact with the meat plant. So how does it spread?
That's right. You don't get this from eating meat, for example. That is not how this is spread. It is spread in the air, and Legionella bacteria does occur naturally in water, like you're looking at right now. And very commonly, it can be found in things like cooling towers, air conditioning systems, hot tubs, showers, plumbing. That is where this bacteria grows. But how do you then have all of these people getting sick who might not be connected? Maybe didn't even work at this facility. As I showed you a moment ago on that map, actually live over a wide swath of land or area in London, Ontario. Well, this can spread when contaminated water droplets become airborne, typically from large sources like cooling towers, which is where they found positive bacteria at this meat facility in London, Ontario. Cooling towers, fountains, industrial industrial air conditioning systems, and then the wind can drift it, which would explain why you do have people over a large area who are all getting sick. So this is something that has been obviously a source of immense frustration for health officials. It would seem they have now identified the source of it. And just a note here, of course, that Sofina Foods, according to health officials, has been very cooperative, trying to get all of this cleaned up and under control.
All right, Hillary, thank you. CBC's Hillary Johnstone.